This is Luke from Whittlesticks, and I want to show you a repair I just did. Now, this is a Harmony Monterey. This is the guitar done. I want to show you how I repaired this and got this back to this state. This is a sentimental guitar. So this is a guitar that a gentleman brought in. It was the guitar he learned on, and then he bought his own in his teenage years. It went into a case in the closet after his father passed away. He got it back, and it had a metal plates attached to the front and the back of the headstock, repairing a broken headstock. And so I want to show you this repair. Now, this is a compilation of reels that I did and that I posted on Instagram and Facebook, but I wanted to do one end-to-end so you can see this from start to finish. And here we go. So here this Monterey is as the day I got it in. Now you can see that this thing is very old, very dusty, incredibly dirty. And here's those plates. Now, this was, like I said, this was an interesting, fix that someone did years ago. Not entirely sure when that plate was put on. Like I said, this was one where when the owner the current owner got it, he found it with the plates on. So we don't know exactly how long they've been on there, but they've been there a while. You can see they got the 2 bolts through the neck there, 6 through the headstock. And that's the plate on the front. And then as we turn it over here, you will see there's another one on the reverse side. And here's the back. Like I said, there is some loose binding. We do have a great baling twine strap. You can see that the neck does need to be reset. So here's that plate, and you can see there are 8 screws that go all the way through. There are T-nuts on the other side to hold that on. And he wants this to be as original as possible. So we also are going to take and put new knobs on those tuners and make that very usable again. And I will have to do some grafting and other stuff on there. But yeah, it is an interesting fix. All right. So now, first off, I'm going to do some cleaning on this. Every time I was touching this thing, and like anywhere I put it in my shop, it was just turning everything black. Now, the original owner had this just on display for a while, just hanging up in a room. I think it was in a room with like a wood-burning stove, and so it's just kind of collected this tar and soot. Not really tar, I guess mostly just kind of the soot and just kind of stuff. You'll see, every time I touch it, man, it is just doing crazy stuff. All the dirt and crap on this. And even after I did this and later on through the repair, I would clean it and get more and more off. So it took me quite a while to get it completely clean. Now, I did save the little baling twine strap just so the original owner could have it. And pulling these screws off so we can see what I'm getting myself into. So here's the big reveal. Pull that off. Kind of start seeing what I'm getting myself into. And there's the brake that's currently open. So this actually had 2 dowels from the first brake, and then it had broken again, and that's when they had put the plates on. And there were little metal shavings all stuck down in there. So I put the plates on and then just drilled through. And so now I've got to figure out how to do this. And initially I was going to try and heat this up and just see if I could pull those dowels and the headstock off all together and then reglue it. I heated this for almost an hour just to see if I could soften all that glue that's in there. And it didn't actually allow me to get those dowels out. But it did soften things up and move it so that I could bring that back to completely smooth. So I was able to put the headstock back into position, which was great. You can see here it's still a little loose, but it's going to work from here. I was trying to decide if I should pull it or cut it off, and I decided it wasn't worth it. So I decided I'm going to go ahead and pull the neck. The fingerboard extension totally just popped loose. That glue was so old. Which was great, and it made it really easy. And so now I'm going to pull that fret right there and drill a hole, and then I will pull the neck out. But while I was doing that, I was noticing there's the binding and the back is actually loose, which is not great for the structure. So I have to be really careful when I pull the neck not to make things worse there. And I did end up, you'll see later on here, I did find plenty of more loose areas on that body. I fixed a lot of binding on this. Anyway, so yeah, now here we're back to, now we're going to start pulling the neck. So we start by pulling this 15 fret out, and then I'm going to drill a hole into the bottom of the dovetail pocket. Use a small drill just to kind of get a feel, make sure I'm in the right place. Use a bigger one, and then I use this heat sink that's on my soldering iron. A little bit of water. I put my neck pulling jig in there, and put in that heat sink and let it go. Now I usually let this sit for about 45 minutes to an hour. And right here's right, if you watch, you'll see a gap form in front of that neck. And this thing will just start to move. I'm just applying pressure right to the back of the heel. And here it goes. You can see that little gap forming right in the front of the body. And this actually came out really smooth. Now, that being said, this neck is tulip poplar. And so the dovetail kind of shredded. There was very little resistance when I put this on there. Like, I barely turned with my fingers. And you can see that one side of the dovetail just totally broke out. Now I end up, because I am doing a neck reset, I am going to end up putting shims in there, and so I will fix all that little bit of damage there. And there's all the crud that was left down in the pocket. But yeah, it's so now I can just work on the neck without the body in the way. So it actually works out pretty good for me. And you can see there's no truss rod in here. So this is where I need to find a scrap. I'm making a jig to get this thing where I can glue it, because I need to correct the angle on this headstock. And so I actually found I used what's called a wine press right here to clamp it down. I made that big block of wood underneath to help push that headstock back in position. And yeah, this just talking about this wine press here. It's a big beam. It's oak and plywood, and that holds this big screw. And that just keeps everything into place. And then I just use that block of redwood right there as a big wedge. And I also redid the block, that's that block right there. I'm going to redo that so it fits the contour of this neck a little bit better. So I can get a better fit when I glue this. But that block ended up being just perfect. Was able to clamp that up, and that is all really smooth. It closed all the cracks for me, which was great. And I ended up taking some time to fit this block just to make sure that everything was fit well. And that's just a sanding beam, aluminum sanding beam. So in the meantime, while I was waiting for things there, I started gluing the body. So started with gluing the neck block back into position against the back. Just use some spool clamps here. And then let these sit overnight. And then I have to go in and glue down that binding. Oh, and then this is where I found more of the back that was loose. I had to glue it as well. And this continued on. There were actually, I glued, I think, 2 or 3 more times after this, little spots in the body that were loose that I found. I didn't film them all just because it got to the point where I was like, well, you've already seen this twice. So, and then I'm cleaning out the neck pocket to keep this, or to get ready for the neck reset. There was just a lot of old high glue and the little bits of the neck that were still in there. I wasn't going to put them back on. Like I said, where this is poplar, I can just replace that easy enough, graft on new, and it's fine. A little bit of filing work just to kind of really get that, fine-tune that, and there you go. Nice and clean and ready for the neck reset. And now here's where I'm gluing back down the binding. All that binding that was loose, I decided that I better get it reattached before I did anything else. And you'll see this binding is still kind of gungy looking, and I cleaned it up more after this. And here's the new block for clamping that headstock. That's the one I came out with to got that right neck angle. Now I use clear packing tape on all my wooden cauls like this to seal it against, so like when I have glue, if there's any squeeze out on the front of that neck, then it won't stick to those cauls. Works really good. It's a nice little trick, even for other guys doing other type of work. You use a wooden caul, just a little bit of packing tape, and now it's glue will not stick to it. And so here I'm just using regular old Tight Bond wood glue. I did work this neck back and forth. I didn't show gluing all this up because I actually put my hand in the way. Used a little spatula to get in there as far as I could. I tried using a syringe to get down in there and just wasn't having a lot of luck. I know a lot of guys use the air compressor systems for this, and but I did work this thing back and forth. Like I said, I didn't show it all. I would work it up and down and flex that joint and work that down deep. So now I can actually go ahead and just clamp the neck down, and you can see the neck or the headstock come up as we shove that block in. And so this is the correct neck angle that we were looking for. And I just let that sit for about almost 2 days before I go on. But yeah, there's that angle that I needed. And now here I'm going to start fixing the holes in the headstock, because there's a lot of them to plug. Well, there's 6 in the headstock and 2 in the neck. The 2 in the neck not going to worry about, because I'm going to have a spline going through there, and then also have to fill in that gap where they had fit that metal plate to it. But I actually used a peg shaper to make these tapered dowels, and then I cleaned these holes. Since all of them were kind of irregular and weird, you can see the difference between the one on the bottom that I reamed and the top one. And since these are tapered, the more you push in this dowel, the tighter that goes. So same thing here, just a repeat. Done them all this way. A little bit of glue on the dowel, and you just push it in as hard as you can. And that will make a super tight dowel. And it's the way I prefer to do it, just because you can always get a nice tight fit. And then I just take a Japanese flush cut saw and just trim these off. Works really good. I go nice and slow. I don't want to rush this. I don't want to, do any more damage to the headstock. And even when you do that, you still have to kind of go in with the chisel and smooth those over. So there's the 6 all plugged and ready for smoothing up. And now this is the spline I'm going to do here. So this is actually a duplicator carver. So I made this little, just out of scraps of wood, this little channel for my duplicator to follow. And then I could line that up with the neck, and then it gives me the angle of the headstock that I need, the width of the spline that I'm using, and the length. I can do all my dry fitting in that little jig instead of in the neck. And so here's a little piece of poplar that matches the neck material. And that way, I used poplar for this. I had some comments that I should have used, a harder wood. But now it'll actually flex and move the same as the rest of the neck. And I actually used epoxy in this, which is not a glue I normally use for this, or will use that much in guitar repair. But this is definitely something I don't want to come out ever, and I don't, I don't want it. I want it to be as hard and never come out at all. Now, you normally don't do a spline in the middle of the neck like this, but because this didn't have a truss rod, I could. And now just filing, shaping that down, blending it into the existing neck. And now I'm going to get ready to put that piece in right there. And this again is another just sheet of poplar. I wanted to use the same material as the neck. That way, like I said, everything is the same. It all flexes the same. I'm not going to have to worry about it expanding, contracting in different rates, with humidity changes. And so first off, I actually just kind of measure out the size of the graft that I need. I use my laser cutter just to give me a little oversized blank. Use the cello bender to bend it so I can get that curvature of the neck. And now I'm going to start the fitting process. And so then I just trim it down until I get something that fits right in that little pocket. I use more Tight Bond and some medical tubing as a clamp, and just wrap this around a lot. You can see here there's multiple wraps on this. And I had let that sit for about a day, and then I'm going in with rasps and files to feather that into the existing neck. Now, obviously, on one side, I have the full thickness of the graft, and on the other side, it goes right down to 0 because I want it to follow that original neck profile. And just use some different sanding blocks and different grits to get it down to, I sanded this down to 400 grit and made that so it just blended right in. And I went ahead, like I said, and went into the finish just a little bit, which is fine because I got to retouch up everything anyway. But this all blended together really well. I was really happy with the way this turned out, this part. Because it all, when I got done, you couldn't feel any of this grafting that I had done and any of the splines. And so I'm pretty happy with the way this goes. The other thing I've got to do before I do the finish work on this is do an epoxy coat. So I leveled everything off, all the little lumps and bumps and stuff, and I figured out that this logo, I was just going to have to redo the logo. Anytime I got near this thing, it disappeared on me. Even when I was cleaning, it was starting to fade away because it was, the varnish was so old, and those pigments don't hold up that well anyway. So I decided, okay, I will go ahead and just going to end up replacing that. So I used some epoxy. This is System West to seal everything. The top of the front of the headstock I wasn't worried about soaking in, but this graft definitely, if I didn't do something, when I tried to put color on it, it would just soak in the finish and go a different color. So I need it to all be totally sealed, and this also will fill any little pores or little micro cracks that are in there, just to give everything a nice even surface to work with. And I don't really need it to go over the original finish, I just need it on the bare wood to seal it up. And this usually takes overnight to dry altogether. And I just got to make sure that this is as smooth as I can get it so I don't have to sand it much before I apply the color. I still have to sand it just a little bit. Here it is all dried up. And now I just take a good flat block on the front and a little bit of a flexible sanding block on the back. Match those curves. And then do a little bit of cleaning. I don't want any finger oils or anything. And then this is shellac that I'm sprayed with an airbrush. Now I started with a lighter brown just to kind of tint everything down, and then I went in with a darker color. It was mostly brown with a little bit of black, and then right at the very end I went in with one that was black with just a little bit of brown, because the finish that was on here was definitely black in it, but when you got it in the light it actually looked more of kind of a dark brown instead. So I definitely had to kind of work with both those colors, and just really kind of fade that all in. And then I went over like the headstock. I went over the bulk of the headstock just to kind of make everything the same color for sure. I did tape up the Monterey because I didn't want to have to redo that logo as well. And some of the edges I left bare just because the customer wanted the kind of the original patina. But you can see how it really helped everything kind of fade away here. And then I'll actually add clear coats after I replace the logo. So now I'm going to start replacing the logo. So start by giving me a little bit of layout points. You don't even see them. There's just some little tiny dots I made with a pencil just to kind of make sure I can get everything lined up where it's supposed to be. This is actually an ivory color, which is close, but it's still a little too light. So I'll have to go back and add a little bit more yellow to it to make it look aged compared to the rest of the Monterey. And then here's a little golden note, and you can see a couple of little slots there that I made to get the gold. And the gold is one of those where I had to go in and just do light little coats. It wasn't showing up real well at first. I don't know if it was just that can or it hadn't quite got mixed enough yet. But anyway, it took several sprays to get it all the way on there. And here we go. There's the gold note, and here's the little slash across it that is actually supposed to go up and mix in with a Y that says Harmony above the Monterey that on this one was just gone. And so there it is, all brought back in. And now I have to go back and age it and make it look like it's been there since the 40s. Anyway, and then here I am going to fade that in, going to get that looking a lot better. Well, I don't know if better, but older. So I did a little bit of touch up, a little bit of blending. I used a light scuffy pad to go in there and kind of just fade the edges out. And then this is shellac that I'm adding a little bit of yellow to, and just the tiniest bit of brown to give it that kind of aged old look. And put this in my airbrush and get ready to start tinting down this ivory. So as you'll watch here, as it goes, you'll kind of see it start to turn more yellow and a little bit of brown. There we go. So now it looks more like the rest of the Monterey. And then I added some clear coats. Now, this isn't going as a full high gloss because the owner, like I said, wanted it to kind of look like the old patina of the guitar finish. So this isn't a full flat. It's kind of a half satin. And it works really well for doing these old restorations, because it gives that look of the old finish where it's, you know, it's kind of gone satin a little bit, but it's still mostly a gloss. And you see that neck, everything really faded in nicely. And I did add more coats to this so that it had a thicker finish around that neck. It helps fill in the little chips of stuff I had done, but also just gives it a longer wear time. And so now I've got to go in and do a little bit more work on that body again. This was a crack on the upper of the F-hole. You need to get it cleated and glued. On this one, I used a liquid bottled hide glue. It works really good for these repairs because it has about a half-hour open time, which means that I can work with this for a half hour before I really have to get it clamped. So plenty of time to work it in, plenty of time to put some on some cleats, and the little wood disc there will actually stay on the inside. It will come off the clamp. It's just on there. I have just poster putty holding it onto the clamp. So I clamp that down, and now that is cleated on the other side, and all this is glued all at once. And I had some comments that I should have put a saran wrap between the clamp and the top, but these actually are a high density plastic, and so they tend not to stick anyway. And I had found more loose binding that I had to take and glue. Like, I glued a lot of binding on this thing. There wasn't, I think there was only one piece of it that I didn't have to go back and re-glue. And apply a little glue, clean off the extra, and tape it down. And tape is actually one of the better ways to glue on binding. It holds it on in two different directions all at the same time. Not a real great way to clamp that. Some guys use a rubber strap or, that, but I just like the tape. Now here I'm starting to clean up the neck, getting ready for the neck reset. And I'm just starting to get all the old hide glue, all the little bits of wood that were left over from pulling the neck, and just get everything generally cleaned up. Now I also have to repair this side where that dovetail was mostly busted out. So I take a chisel, give me a flat end to graft into, also take and kind of flatten off all that, torn wood, take a file, smooth it up even more because I want a nice good surface to glue to. And I cut two little scraps of poplar. Again, I thought one was going to do it, and once I got it glued on, I realized I needed a second. Now I go ahead and level that up to the bottom of the dovetail, and then I'll take a chisel and actually just cut that into the existing dovetail, blend it in. And I actually changed chisels here because this one was a lot sharper than the previous chisel. You always have to sharpen your tools all the time. Anyway, so got and filed that right down into it, blended all of that in together, and here it is all fixed up. And now I'm ready to actually do the neck reset. And I'll actually be adding shims on top of this once this is in, because right now it slides in there just fine, but it's loose. And so here I'm getting the neck angle, so I just kind of roughly taped in that bridge so I could see where I'm at. And now I go in and clear out some of the bottom of the neck, and I actually use a sandpaper method to change the angle of this neck. As guitars age, the neck creeps forward, and so you can see the amount of angle I changed this. It's not much, it's usually a degree or two. Here's the two new maple shims glued on. I'm just feathering them into the existing neck. And this way, when I put it in, you'll see that it now doesn't fit all the way back. There's just a little bit of a gap there, which is fine. So I just take and kind of file that neck pocket just a little bit, and then give it a good squeeze, and everything is right where it's supposed to be. Nice and tight. It's actually a lot tighter fit than it was new. Harmonies were never known to be a, high grade craftsmanship instrument. It's just kind of the way they were. They were built for the inexpensive player. Now I am using hot high glue for this because that is what was originally this was done with, and I want to keep everything as traditional as I can that way. So 2 clamps on here to get everything secured, and then I let that sit for usually about a day or 2. And here's just the turnaround. You can see it really fit in nicely. A nice, really happy with the way that fit on the overall. Now, here I'm going to start the fretwork. So I got to get that fret I pulled right at first back in, clean all the little crud out of the bottom, and clean off the fret, because I did actually heat that fret up to make sure there wasn't any glue in there. And then actually take an old cobbler hammer and tap that back into place. And I do put a little bit of glue on there just to hold it in, so I don't have to worry about it popping back out. Here I'm just taping off the board, getting ready to do the fret leveling and recrown. That way I don't mess up the board when I'm working on just the frets. I mark the frets so that I can see when I level them like this which frets I'm hitting, and making sure that I'm hitting all of them at the same time. Once they're level, I mark them again and start doing the recrown. And this is just making the frets round on top again, because when you level them, you end up with flat spots. So you want everything to be a uniform shape across there. Little vacuum for cleanup, get all the little shavings out of there, a little finer grit diamond file, and some lapping with its 3 different grits of sandpaper, and then I buff them out. And when I get done with this buffing, it's pretty well a mirror polish. Now I can strip the tape off, oil this board down, and you can see I did not film fixing that fretboard there, but those top 2 were actually filled in. And now we got to get a new nut, and this is bone, unbleached bone. It's personally my favorite just because it looks like it's been on there a long time. Now I actually take and shape the nut down, I sand it all up, and then I go ahead and buff it to get a nice mirror shine on there. And they're really beautiful when you get that. The bone really does just take a nice polish. And I know some guys do it in a different method. They do some of the other fitting and then buff it out last. I like to do mine first just so I make sure I get all those like little side and all the little nooks and crannies. And that way I don't have to take the guitar nut on and off again. So I actually spot glue this nut right onto the guitar, do the layout, get the fret height so I can get the nut slots to the right depth, and use a little tiny fine edged file to make some notches for my string spacing. And then I use a nut slot gauge so that I don't go too deep. So I can actually set this to a certain height according to the fret height and end up with the perfect nut slot heights every time. Add a little bit of graphite in there so that it just helps the strings slide in those grooves. And I also like the unbleached because it does have a little bit kind of the natural oils in the bone, which help lubricate those strings as well. Now we got to address these old tuners. Now, one thing I did not notice until I actually started working on these is they are different tuners. They're from the same era. Definitely like the gears and that part are definitely from the same factory, but you can see the plates are a different shape. And I didn't catch that till it was at the end. And the owner wanted just the original parts kind of left as is, so they're just cleaned up, even though they're kind of a little rusty. It's what he wanted. Get some fresh strings on here. So these are a really light set of 10 to 47s. We didn't want to risk damaging the neck at this point. He may try some heavier ones later on, but for now, this is what is kicking on it. And we're going to get all the strings on there, get it tuned up, and ready to go. So as you can see, this guitar took a lot of work. And this is one definitely, this is just putting back, 40, 50 years back into this guitar. And this is one that, definitely this is labor of love type of repair. The owner is going to be totally ecstatic to do this. I'm going to have a gentleman here play the guitar so we can hear it, because I am not a great guitar player. Now, definitely this was, like I said, this is more money was put into this thing than it is worth, but that is okay monetarily. But this is totally a sentimental repair, and I just wanted to show you things that could be done. Now, this same repair could be done on high-end guitars. Now, of course, I hope a high-end one doesn't have these metal plates attached when it comes in. But this also shows the rest of you that do guitar work, you can fix anything if you take the time and the patience. And there were a few things on this, like I said, I normally wouldn't do. The spline in the back, in the middle is not a common thing because there's a truss rod. Normally there are two. But since it didn't have one, I could do it that way. Anyway, so just wanted to show you that, give you one more shot of it completed, and we will show you a little clip of the sound. And I want to thank everybody that had joined me on the journey of watching this, and if you do want to see my daily stuff, I do post Monday through Friday, a short little reel, at least usually. Every once in a while, it's, you know, things get busy and I don't, but do follow me over on Instagram and Facebook, and you will see all these things all the time. And definitely, I do read a lot of the comments. I don't always respond because there's getting to be quite a few of them, but I do appreciate the deal. And if there is a question about the process, I usually will respond, and just to let you know. Anyway, and if you guys know a process that I'm not doing that you think is better, post it, tag me in a video. Let's all grow together. Anyway, I wanted to just say again, thank you all. Stay tuned, and we will see you on the next one.